All right, so today we're going to talk about our first welding assignment on flux core arc welding, and we're going to do a surface weld. We've done a surface weld before. It's not that big of a deal. If you don't remember what a surface weld is we're going to run a series of beads across this plate that are overlapping. All right, and so it's kind of think about it as dominoes slightly knocked over on each other. We don't want the beads just next to each other or even touching. We want each bead to slightly overlap the previous bead, about halfway to a third, okay? And all we're going to do is we're going to go nice and steady with our gun. When you're welding, you want to have a stick out that's approximately about a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch. So this distance right here. If it's too long, the shielding gas that we are using with our flux core arc welding will dissipate, and so we're going to get a little bit of what's called piping porosity or deep pores. If our stick out is too short, there's going to be too much gas floating around the puddle, and the gas will actually be trapped inside the flux while it's solidifying. And so you'll end up with what we call a worm track, or an elongated or a long porosity hole. So when you're flux core arc welding, you can get dinged for being too close and too far away. So we really want to try and hover around that 3/4 to ½ inch on this flux core wire. The settings we're going to use are on the chart, and we're going to be cutting material that is approximately 5/16 thick. Okay, we're not going to be using a thinner material. We're going to use a little bit thicker. And so I'm going to look at the 1/4 inch settings on the chart. So when you set your welder up, take a look at the chart and adjust your voltage and your wire feed for 1/4 inch settings on the wire we're using. When you cut your material, it's very important that you start cutting things accurately. So now I'm going to actually measure the pieces you bring me. If you actually bring me a piece that measures within the 4 inches by 6 inches that I'm asking, I'll automatically give you an extra point on your assignment, okay? So make sure you cut these accurately. Don't just cut willy-nilly. I've been seeing people cut really big pieces for a single weld. This should be plenty. We'll go 4 inches by 6, and we'll weld the 4-inch way. And we're gonna fill this all the way up going that direction, all right? It'll go by pretty quick. I would quench this every 2 to 3 welds. You need to chip it and brush it every weld, but I would quench this every 2 to 3 welds. It's going to get very hot. One thing to also remember is that while we're flux core arc welding, we're going to be dragging. We don't want to get too steep while we're dragging, and we could be somewhat straight in. Just turn your head down to the side and make sure you can see the wire making contact with the metal and watch the puddle. I've noticed that some kids will get lazy and will start doing a perpendicular drag. That tends to create lots of spatter. In order to eliminate your spatter, you want to try and keep the gun in direction with the way you're dragging. So whether you're holding the gun like this or the gun like that as you drag across, or if you're left-handed and you're dragging that way, that's the way I would drag it. And again, there will be slag on this, so you're going to need to chip. Make sure you brush and clean each weld before you go on to the next one. Let's go ahead and get our gear on and weld. All right, now that we got our gear on, we want to make sure that your gas is on, and again, your machine is on to the right settings. Again, I would pick somewhere around the 1/4 to 3/16 settings on the chart for 045 flux core. All right, we're going to try really hard to keep our first bead nice and straight. We're going to go. Grab our chipping hammer and our brush. Okay. There we have a nice straight bead. And make sure you go nice and slow and keep it steady. Second bead. We're going to overlap. Basically try and put our wire almost on to the previous weld. I'm going to watch the puddle get a little bit bigger and weld up onto the previous weld. So the toe of the previous weld will be approximately an 1/8 inch away from where I'm placing the wire. Maybe a little bit closer. Basically go slow enough that you can see that the puddle is overlapping the previous bead while you're staying nice and steady. Make sure you quench the metal periodically, again, every 2 to 3 welds. Because our settings are a little bit hotter than we've used before, you may find that shade 10 is no longer comfortable for you, and that you might want to put it on a shade 11 or 12. You'll notice that the flux cord wire has a nice smooth setting, a nice smooth sound, and the bead will be nice and smooth as well when you're done. We're going to do a total of 8 welds, so get comfortable. Okay, so there's our surface weld, 8 beads. Hopefully that you measured the plate right, and you'll get a couple points extra on this, and then you'll finish up with the rest of the plate to get your second score. All right, that's it. That's the surface weld. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.